Hey, what's going on, family? This is Andy Henriquez, and of course, I want to welcome you to the Thursday night Show Up for Your Life motivational live stream. I've got a message for you today. This is for you specifically. You are in the process of going after something, but you are frustrated. And the reason why you're frustrated is because it just seems so difficult. It seems so complex. And you're really spinning your wheels and you're trying to figure out what's next. Well, listen, if that's you, I've got a message for you. So you just sit tight. We're going to be getting started just momentarily. And of course, I want to welcome you to the Thursday night Show Up for Your Life motivational live stream. This is where you come each and every week to get that midweek pick me up. And so I am so grateful and thankful that you decided to go ahead and tune in. I've got a message for you and I'm excited about it. Yes, yes, yes. Hey, what's going on, family? Listen, I am super excited. I got a message for you. This is specifically for those of you like you are in the process of doing something and you're feeling a little frustrated because it seems a bit complex. And that complexity is causing you to feel stuck, right? It's keeping you from moving forward. It's keeping you from getting the book released. It's keeping you from starting the business. It's keeping you from rolling out that next thing that you've been wanting to do. It's keeping you from accomplishing your goals and your dreams. And let me tell you something. I've got something that I want to share with you that if you can learn to stop doing this one thing, you're going to start moving forward at such a faster pace. You're finally going to knock out this thing you've been wanting to do. Let me say hi to a couple people. Hey, Rudy, how you doing? Hey, Frank, how you doing? Hey, Darren, good to see you. Appreciate you guys tuning in. As you're tuned in right now, go ahead and do me a quick favor. Put in your city and your state so I can go ahead and say what's up to you before we get started on tonight's message. Hey, what's going on, Vaughn? I see you, my man. Hey, as you guys are tuning in, do me a favor. Put in your city and your state. Listen, I've got to share something with you because most of us are doing this one thing. And if we could stop doing this one thing, we will finally accomplish our goals and our dreams. We'll finally get the book out. We'll finally get the business to the next level. We'll finally cross that 7-figure mark. We will finally be able to travel where we want to go. We'll finally be able to make some things happen. And so if there's something that you are working on right now and you have been extremely frustrated because for some reason you just haven't been able to complete it, for some reason, you just haven't been able to get to that finish line, this message is for you. I am going to set some people free. Do you hear me? I'm going to set some people free. Let me say hi to a couple people. Hey, Christine Wright from Indianapolis. Hey, what's going on? Sadie from Rome, Georgia. Hey, Teresa in Pompano. Hey, my man Jermaine from Fort Pierce. Yes, Genevieve. How you doing? Good to see you. So listen, I've got a message for you. And this message is specifically for those of you, like you are in the process of pursuing something. I know that if you've even taken the time to stop and listen right now, chances are you're in the middle of pursuing something. I mean, there's something that you are actively going after in life. Now, it may be something that people know about. It may be something that you've been not really sharing with folks. But if you've gotten to a place where you've hit the wall, right, where you're starting to feel a little frustrated, I've got something specifically that I want to share with you because let me tell you something. I've been there before. And what I realize is this, that most of us, there's something that we keep doing. You hear me? Most of us, there's something that we keep doing that is keeping us from accomplishing our goals and our dreams. This thing is keeping the majority of us from getting to the finish line. And you say, well, Andy, what is it? What is it? I'm going to tell you what it is. I remember hearing something from Tony Robbins many years ago, and he shared this, and this thing resonated with me so much. And here's what he said. He said, complexity is the enemy of execution. I'm going to say that again. He said that complexity is the enemy of execution. And so let me start unpackaging that and breaking that down for you. Most of us have something that we're pursuing, something that we are either pursuing actively or something that we have in our mind that we would like to begin to pursue. And then here's what the majority of us do. When we start thinking about writing the book, we're thinking about starting the business, we're thinking about making a career change, we're thinking about making a shift in our life. Here's what we do. We start thinking about what it's going to take for us to make that thing happen. We start thinking about what it's going to take to have the happy, fulfilling relationship, to get to the next level in our business, to be able to get the promotion, to write the book, to take on whatever the new project is, whatever your heart's desire is, we start thinking about it. You know what we start doing? we start making it really, really complex in our minds. And so we start making the process so complex in both our minds and even in our approach. And so what happens is, because it starts feeling so complex, because it starts feeling so very complex, here's what we end up doing. We end up throwing in the towel, we end up quitting, and we don't follow through. And so what I want to do is I want to get you to start shifting your perspective so that you can finally be able to accomplish this thing that you want to make happen. And so allow me for a moment to be able to unpackage this. First, you need to know why. Why do we want to make things complex? I personally believe that one of the reasons why we try to make things complex is because if we can make it complex, if we can make it difficult, then we sort of let ourselves off the hook, right? And so if you've got this desire to write a book, or you've got a desire to take on a project, you've got a desire to do something amazing with your life, if you can make it quote unquote difficult, if you can make it quote unquote complex, if you can put yourself in a situation where you're saying, well, I don't know what to do, then what it does is it frees you up to do absolutely nothing. So first of all, we need to call it for what it is. And we need to understand that when we make things complex, it is really just giving us an opportunity to hide out. And so we like to hide behind complexity. Do you hear me? So we want to make it complex so that we can keep from executing. We make it complex so we don't have to take action. And so I want you to start thinking about it right now. What is it that you are actively pursuing? What is it that you're actively going after that you have found a way to make it super complex in your mind? And because you've made it so complex, you have not taken any action. Are you hearing me on this, Sergio? Are you hearing me, Spence? Are you hearing me, Norman? Are you hearing me, Kenya? Do you hear me? When we make these things complex, we keep from taking action. And so I want to break this down for you just a little more. I want you to think about this. There was an article that I was reading. It was put out by the New York Times. And here's what they said in that article. There was a survey that they put out, and here's what they discovered. They said that over 81% of people, when they were surveyed, said that they believe that they have a book inside of them. So that means that 8 out of 10 people that you meet deep down inside believe that they have a book inside of them. Now, here's what I want you to think about. Here's what happens. You say, well, 81% of people believe that they have a book inside of them. So why is it that very few of those people will ever begin to start writing just a couple of sentences for their book? Well, I'm going to tell you right now, the reason why is because we make it complex, so complex that we don't even get started. I watch people do this all the time. Like, I interact with people. They say, Andy, listen, I know you got your book, Show Up for Your Life. I read your book. It was awesome. I bought it on Amazon. And I say, thank you. I appreciate the support. And then they start asking me questions. They said, listen, I'm thinking about writing a book, but I've got these questions, some things I'm trying to figure out. They're like, Andy, should I pursue the route of trying to go through a publisher, or should I go self-publish? Then they're like, well, Andy, should I go ahead and hire a graphic designer right now to go ahead and start designing my book? Well, Andy, how do I start coming up with the title for my book? Hey, Andy, let me ask you a question. Like, who did you hire as your proofreader? Hey, Andy, who did you hire as your editor, and so forth? So I let them ask all of those questions, and then I asked them this one simple question. Have you begun to write your book? And here's what they say the majority of the time. No, because I don't know where to start. Are you kidding me? You want to write a book, and you're asking me about publishing, you're asking me about editors, you're asking me about graphic designers, but you're saying you don't know where to start? How about this for starts? Why don't you just start writing? Like, why don't you actually just start writing what it is that you want to put in the book? Let me tell you something. We want things to be really complex, because the more complex we can make it, the more that we can justify why we haven't taken action. And so what I want you to understand is this. We need to start making things simple. Do you hear me? I want you to start simplifying the things that you're pursuing in your life. So you want to write a book. I understand there's a lot of steps, a lot of things you might be trying to figure out, but you at least know what the first step is. Pull out your laptop, turn it open, put your fingers on the keyboard, and start typing a couple sentences that you want in the book. The first step is grab a notepad, grab a pen, and actually start writing. Like, stop trying to make the process so difficult. If you start off with one step, you start just writing. As you start writing, you get further on in the process. Then you're going to figure out what the next step is. Then once you figure out that step, then you're going to figure out what the next step is. That is the way it works with the majority of the things that you want to accomplish in your life. You simply need to start someplace. You've got to simplify the process. Do me a favor right now. Put hashtag simple in the comment section right now. Put hashtag simple. That's what we need to go back to, making things simple. The reason why we get stuck and we don't quite move to the next level in our lives is because when we look at the next level, we say it's so complex. I don't know what to do. I don't know where to start. What I'm saying to you is that you do know where to start. There is something that you can do. You've just got to start with what you know. Listen, I'm going to tell you right now, you can try to make things as complex as you want, but I want you to understand this. It is nothing more than you just simply creating a barrier, an excuse to keep you from moving forward. Are you hearing me on this, Kenya? Do you hear me, Christine? Do you hear me, Janelle? Do you hear me, Sadie? When we make it complex, we are doing nothing more than simply trying to create a barrier to keep us from moving forward. And I want you to stop doing that. I want you to move forward. I started to think back. This was many, many years ago before I did my very first event. I remember sitting down with a friend and I was saying, man, I would love to do an event. And she said to me, well, why won't you do your first event? And I said, well, I don't know where to start. I mean, I don't even know, like, how do I structure the event? What am I going to call the event? How am I going to promote the event? How am I going to get people to sign up for the event? Like, what am I even going to do? And so I came up with all of these excuses to make the process seem so complex as to why I could not start my very first event. Then my friend let me say all those things that I had to say. And then she looked at me, she said, Andy, how about you just start off by setting a date? And then she said, why don't you just follow that by getting a hotel room? And then why don't you just follow that by calling some people on the phone and telling them you're going to do an event? And when she responded to me, I felt so guilty because I made it sound so complex. But then when she said step after step after step, she made it so simple. And what she was helping me to realize was that I had basically made this thing super complex, way more complex than what I needed to. And what I want you to understand is this, that there is something that you want to do. There's something that you've been meaning to do and that you're in the process of doing right now, and you are trying to make it too complex. And I want to give you some practical steps that you can take so that you can start giving yourself some traction, and so you can stop making it so difficult, stop making it so complex, and so that you can start taking action right away. First of all, this is the first step. This is the first thing I want you to do. Number one, I want you to look at the thing that you're pursuing right now, or the thing that you want to do. And I want you to be honest with yourself for a moment and ask yourself the question, is there a more simple way? Like, am I making this a little more complex than what it needs to be? Like, is there just another approach that I can take to this? Like, does it have to be this complex? And here's what I've come to realize, that when you stop for a moment and you stop committing to the same old conversation, and you stop committing to the same old excuses, and you stop committing to saying how difficult it is, because remember, whatever it is that you commit to, whatever story you're buying into, you also have to buy the consequences that come with that story. So if you're saying that it's too difficult for me to start my business, or it's too difficult for me to get to multiple six figures, it's too difficult for me to get to seven figures, if that is your predominant conversation, then that is what is going to show up in your life. And so what I want you to understand is you will decree a thing and it'll be established unto your life. The thing that you speak, the thing that you're speaking over your life, the thing that you're speaking over your business, the thing that you're speaking over your relationship, that is what is going to take place. What I am saying is that stop committing to the same old conversation and stop for a moment and consider, is there a more simple approach? Does this have to be as difficult as I am attempting to make it. And so if you can stop for a moment and just ask yourself the question, is it a more simple way that I can approach writing this book? Is there a more simple way that I can approach to scaling and growing my business? Is there a more simple way that I could approach to getting more leads? Is there a more simple way that I could approach to whatever it is that you're trying to make happen? And what I'm saying to you, guaranteed, is if you stop to think about it for a moment, you will uncover a more simple approach to it. And so just like when I told my friend, I can't do my first event many years ago, she said to Andy, are you serious? You're making this thing sound so complex. Just like when people say, I want to write a book, stop making it so complex. Listen, just start off someplace. What's the best thing for you to do? Pick up a pen, start writing, open up the laptop. If you're thinking about doing an event, how about book a date? Step number 1. How about number 2? Figure out what you want to cover. How about step number 3? Figure out your venue. How about step number 4? Pick up the phone and start calling some people and close them to your event, right? So we want it to be really, really complex. And I'm going to tell you right now, this conversation I'm having with you, I have to have it with myself. And so oftentimes when we're looking to just grow and scale and get to that next level, we want to make things complex. So remember, step number 1 is to ask yourself this question, stop for a moment and say, is there a more simplified approach? Is there another way that I can do it? So I want you to get that. That's step number 1. Step number 1 is make it simple. Somebody do me a favor right now in the comment section, type that in, make it simple. Make it simple. In other words, I tell you to make it simple because I want you to understand this. You have chosen to make it complex. Whoa, bet you didn't know that. Like, many of the things are not complex because they're truly complex. They're complex because we have made them complex in our mind. We have chosen to make these things complex. And just like you have chosen to make it complex, you've chosen to make your journey to multiple 6 figures complex. You've chosen to make this idea of starting this business complex. You have chosen to make this idea of writing the book complex. You have chosen to make this nonprofit that you want to start complex. You have chosen to make this idea of doing a webinar, a podcast, or whatever it might be complex. I want you to understand it is a choice. It is the way that you're choosing to think about it. It is you are stacking things in your mind to say why it is complex. Just like you decide to make it complex, you can decide to make it simple. That's what I want you to understand. If you get that, things begin to change. You can decide right now. You can decide right now to make it simple. Now, once you've made the decision that it is simple, now you can start thinking about what is one thing that I can start on. What is one thing that I could do? You want to write the book? How about this? Open up the laptop, take out a pen, right? You want to go ahead and invest in real estate? How about this? The one thing you can do, go to a real estate club meeting and start learning some information. You say to yourself, wait a second, I want to start losing 100 pounds. Don't make it complex. What's one of the first things you could do? Get you a gym membership and show up to the gym. You're saying to yourself, I want to start changing my relationship around. I want to change my marriage around. What's the one thing you could do? Sit down with your spouse, have a conversation and say, hey, how can we improve the communication here? Where are we struggling? How can we make things better? What I want you to understand is once you make it simple, you can identify one thing that you can do. Now, here's something I want you to understand. Here's what most of us fail to do. We fail to execute on the one thing that we know. And so I'm going to share this with you. If you move on what you know, whatever that one thing is that you know to start writing, whatever that one thing is that you know to start attending the workshop or the seminar, whatever that one thing is that you know, if you move on what you know, things will begin to get clearer for you. But if you don't move on what you don't know will continue to paralyze you. I'm going to say that again. If you move on the one thing that you know, if you move on that one thing, things will begin to get clear for you as you move down the process, right? But if you don't move on the thing that you know, what you don't know is going to make things seem so complex that you're not going to take action. Are you hearing me on this? And so what I want you to do is, number one, you've got to stop for a moment and say, is there a more simple approach to this? Is there a more simple approach? And another thing is, I want you to think about what is one thing that you can act on. Do me a favor right now. Put hashtag one, hashtag one, hashtag one. Listen, all you got to do is identify one thing to get started. Do you get that? See, we want to make it super complex, but just about everything that you're going to do is going to start with one single step. And so what we do is, in order to keep us from getting started, we want to stack all the steps that we don't know. So we put about 50 stacks, 50 steps of things that we don't know, where I don't know what to do this. I don't know how to get a publisher. I don't know what to do this. I don't know what this next step is. Nobody asked you about the things that you did know. I'm just asking you, what is the one thing that you do know, and find that one thing and act on it. So what is the one thing that you do know? And so if the one thing that you know is you know who you can call on the phone, make that phone call. If the one thing that you know, the one thing that you know is that there's a great book that's the beginning process, pick up the book and start reading. If the one thing that you know, what is the one thing that you know? Whatever that one thing that you know that starts pushing you in the direction of your goals and your dreams, what I am saying is you've got to take that one step. If you can move on that one thing, it gets you that much closer to the journey. Hope you're getting some value from this. I'm about to break down the rest of these steps. Do me a favor right now. If you're getting some value from this, hit the share button, hit some hearts, put some thumbs up, whatever you want to do, whatever all the things you got to do on social media, show some love to this so that we can make sure enough people see this. Hit the share button so we can make sure enough people see this. Because here's what I want you to understand. Number one, we want to figure out, can this be more simple? Can you simplify this thing that you're making happen in your life? Can you simplify the process? Can you simplify it in your mind? Can you find a way to not make it so complex? And then once you simplified it, the next step is for you to find one thing. One thing. I didn't say two. I didn't say three. I didn't say four, because that's what we want to do. We try to think of 10, 15, 20 things at one time. And if we can make it super complex, we don't act. What I am saying is that let's stop making things so difficult, because as Tony Robbins said, complexity is the enemy of execution. I'm going to say it again. Tony Robbins said this: complexity is the enemy of execution. And so the reason why we don't execute is because we keep making things so complex. What I'm saying to you is that you can create a big shift in your life and begin to produce the results that you want if you can go from being complex and making everything complex and simplifying it. So step number one is saying, how can I make this more simple? Step number two is figuring out what is the one thing that you can do. And then as you go through the journey, here's what step number three is. Step number three, you have to commit to simplicity. I'm going to say it again. You have to commit to simplicity. Well, Andy, why do I need to commit to simplicity? I'm going to tell you right now. Because the way that we're hardwired, the way that we are, and especially the more intelligent we are, the more degrees that we have, the more things that we've done in our lives, the more things that we've accomplished, we are hardwired to want to make things complex. Do you hear me? We are hardwired to make things complex. And so what I want you to understand is that once you finally slow things down and you figure out what the one first step that you want to take, I want you to understand you're going to have a natural inclination to want to make the process difficult. So even though you heard me deliver this message, even though I told you to slow it down, even though I told you to find the simplicity, even though I told you to find the one thing, guess what? You go do the one thing, and then as you go through the process, you're going to find a way to try to make it difficult again. And what I'm saying to you is that you've got to commit to simplicity. Do you hear me? You've got to commit to simplicity. And what I mean by that is so that automatically there should be a meter should go off when you want to try to make it complex again and say, wait a second, you're doing it again. You're doing it again. You're trying to make this too difficult. Like, chill out for a second. Stop trying to make this so difficult. You can do this. You got this. You can take the business to the next level. It doesn't have to be as difficult as what you're making it. Like, you can take your relationship, your marriage to the next level. You don't have to make it this difficult. Like, I need you to understand it could be more simple than this. I remember speaking to this guy. Oh man, this was good. I was speaking to this guy. He said, Andy, man, he said, I contemplated for about 6 months on how I was going to get in contact with the CEO of a major company and see how I was going to pitch to them hiring us to provide a service for them. He said, I knew that if I could speak to this CEO, that we would be able to land a massive contract, which would completely be a game changer for our company. And so he said, for 6 months, I agonized in my mind how I was going to possibly get in contact with the CEO. And so he said, I came up with all these convoluted plans. One of the things that I decided to do, that I was going to start sending letters to his office. And then I started saying to myself, well, if I send the letters, he's the CEO. He probably never actually looks at the mail himself. The mail will probably never make it to his desk. And he said, the other thing I thought about was I heard that he was part of an organization, and that organization met on a quarterly basis. And I said, well, maybe one of the things that I could do is join that organization, go to one of the meetings, and maybe perhaps possibly he would be there. But I found out that he's not always there. And then the other thing that I found out was that I looked at him on LinkedIn, and I found out that we had somebody that was a couple of degrees of separation. And then I said, well, maybe I could reach out to that person to do an introduction. But the person that I reached out to didn't really know him all that well. And he said, I agonized. And I was like, well, I just don't understand. How am I going to be able to get in contact with this person? And so he said he was so frustrated, agonizing over it. And then finally his wife was like, dude, why are you making things so complex? Pick up the phone and call his office. And his wife told him this. It was probably about 7:00 p.m. And he was like, pick up the phone and call the office? Are you kidding me? Somebody like that doesn't pick up the phone. The guy has a secretary, and there's a secretary for the secretary. Like, there's no way I'm going to be able to get the guy on the phone. And then he said, well, his wife was like, you need to call the guy up on the phone. Just call the office and ask for him. And he's like, there's no way you could get a guy like that on the phone. And then so he said, fine, I'll pick up the phone and call him tomorrow. The wife says, what do you mean pick up the phone and call him tomorrow? Call him right now. He looked over at his watch. He's like, it's 7:30 p.m. He's not still in the office. There's no way that he's still in the office. His wife says, well, you won't know if you don't pick up the phone and call him. So finally, he reluctantly picks up the phone. It's 7:30 p.m. He's been agonizing 6 months about how to get in contact with the CEO of this company. He picks up the phone and he's looking at his wife. Fine, I'll call. No one's in the office in the first place. And if it is, I'm just going to get a voicemail, or it's going to be a secretary. And so he's on the phone. He calls and he's like, oh, no one's going to pick up. And then he hears, hello? And he goes, hello? Yeah, yes, I'm sorry. May I speak to Mr. Walton? He said, yeah, this is Mr. Walton. And he stops. He's like, and so he's like in shock. He picked up the phone. And then so when he finally came out of shock, he's like, Mr. Walton, is this you? He's like, yeah, you did call my office, didn't you? And then so when he finally snapped out of it, he started speaking to Mr. Walton. And he spoke to him about this amazing service that he could provide for his company. And the next day, he got an opportunity to come in and actually meet and present to Mr. Walton. And he landed this huge contract. And what he said is that, man, you won't understand. I agonized and made this process so complex. And he said that I picked up the phone. And sure enough, that day, his secretary had gone home. And he was in the office by himself. And so the phone rang. And he's not accustomed to the phone ringing at that time. And so since he was in the office by himself, he picked up the phone. And so here's this man that he's been trying to reach for 6 months. Here's this person that he's been contemplating and making it so complex. And all he had to do was pick up the phone. And here's what I want you to realize. There is something that you are pursuing right now. There is something that you're wanting to make happen. And what I'm telling you right now is you, in your very smart, intelligent mind, have found a way to make it super complex. And what I want you to understand is that complexity is the enemy of execution. When I heard Tony Robbins say that years ago, I was like, man, that hit me like a light bulb. He's right, because what I tend to do, I tell you, I don't know if anybody else is willing to admit it. I got something I want to do. I start stacking all the things I got to do, and I start trying to make it really, really complex. And what I want you to understand, it does not have to be that complex. Do you hear me? You can straight up keep it simple. Do you hear me? Hey, I remember back in the day, they used to write something as KISS. It said, keep it simple, stupid. Keep it simple, stupid. You hear me? Stop trying to make this thing so difficult. Do me a favor right now. Put hashtag KISS. Hashtag KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. Do you hear me? Like, stop making this thing so difficult. So right now, I want to hear about what is it that you're working on? Who's willing to straight up be honest? Like, who's willing to be honest? What are you working on right now that you have made this thing a little more complex than what it needs to be? What are you working on right now where you have been spinning your wheels? Like, be honest with me right now. Put your comments below. I'm going to go back after this message and I'm going to read these comments. Like, who's willing to be honest, right? Who's willing to be honest? I'm going to be very honest with you. Here's something right now. Here's something I discovered. Y'all ready for this? I'm going to pull the curtain back. Y'all mind if I pull the curtain back? I'm going to put myself on blast, as they say. I'm going to go ahead and just reveal something. So check this out. So I've been having a conversation with myself and a conversation with my team. And I love listening into YouTube videos and also listening into podcasts. And for a while, I've been saying to myself, Andy, you should really do a podcast. And here's the crazy thing. I was thinking to myself, like, man, I want to do a podcast. And I feel like, I'm torn between two things. And so here's where it goes through my mind. I was like, my brand is around storytelling, and my business is around helping entrepreneurs, speakers, coaches, influencers to be able to effectively share and tell their stories, to be able to build out stories that allows them to connect, to be able to influence, to move people to action, right? But there's another part of me that says, you know what? On the inside, though, part of my DNA is I love to encourage people. I love to motivate people, which is the reason why I've been doing a message like this for the past 10 years. So I say, if I do a podcast around just motivation, it might be great, but it doesn't necessarily set up my storytelling aspect of my business. If I do a podcast just on storytelling, then maybe perhaps I'm not going to be as excited about it because I want to still be able to encourage people and bring forth motivation. Now, meanwhile, I want you to think about this. At my Master Storyteller Academy training that I do, I bring both worlds together. And so many of the people who've attended my Master Storyteller Academy would tell you that it is hard for them to put in words what happened because, yes, I did help them to develop their signature story. But on top of that, they received so much more because throughout the entire training, I do so many things that helps to shift their mindset, that they're also being encouraged, that they're having a paradigm shift, that they are being up-leveled, that they're upgrading, that they're leveling up. So I found a way to merge there, but I want to make it complex. And y'all ready for this? Oh my gosh, I'm almost embarrassed to say this. So last night, I said, well, let me go ahead and just check out a couple podcasts and let me download the app that lets you pull up podcasts. And so I'm looking at some of the podcasts. And can I tell you something? I put my name into the search feature for the podcast. And you know what I completely forgot? I forgot that years ago, I had a web talk radio show that was also a podcast. And here I am searching for my name, just seeing if there's another Andy Henriquez out there, and let alone, it was my old episodes from my podcast that back then I didn't make it complex. I just started and created the podcast. And so those are episodes from years ago when I just did it and I didn't make it complex. And here I am trying to make it complex in my mind. Meanwhile, I had done it years before when I just made it simplified and I just did it. And the reason why I made it simple before is because my phone rang and they called and they said, Andy, we want to give you a web talk radio show that's also a podcast. And so here's what you got to do. Can you commit to doing this? And I was like, okay, yeah, I'll do it. And I just did it. And I didn't make it complex. And now what has happened is years have gone by and I've done all these things. And so I want to make it super complex. So I got to make sure it's top notch and all these things. And I want to make it complex in my mind. What I want you to realize is this is something that we do on a daily basis. And what I want you to understand is it does not have to be that complex, but rather we just need to start. Do you hear me? You just need to start. Zig Ziglar said you do not have to be great in order to get started, but before you will ever become great in your life, you must get started. And the key to starting is simplicity. Complexity is the absolute enemy of execution. And so I just want to know from you, I appreciate some of you, you've already put in the comment section what the thing is that you're working on right now. And so whatever that thing is that you're working on, I want you to commit to one thing. First of all, I want you to commit to just asking yourself the question, is there a more simple way? Is there a more simple way for you to make this thing happen? Is there a more simple way for you to execute this goal? Is there a more simple way for you to start, or is there a more simple way for you to get back engaged and build momentum again? And then I want you to ask yourself just one simple question. What is the one step that you got to take to start simplifying the process and just start building momentum? Like, I want to hear from you right now in the comment section. Just put one step. What is the one step? Like, so for some of you, excuse me, I was looking at the comments. Some of you were talking about you're in the process, you want to do your next book. Some of you were saying that you're in the process of trying to file your nonprofit status. Some of you are saying that you want to approach companies about corporate events. Some of you are talking about expanding your manufacturing company or your manufacturing business. Some of you were talking about those things, creating training sessions, whatever that thing is. But now I want you to, number one, find a way. How can you make it more simple? And just let me just ask you a question. What's just one step? What is one step that you can commit to taking to make your process more simple and start allowing you to start building momentum? If you can commit to that one step, everything changes. Do you hear me? Everything changes. What is the one step that you're going to take? Do me a favor right now. Put that one step in the comment section. I'm having you do this because I want you to understand the majority of people don't take the time to write down their goals, to write down the things that they're doing. Just the act of writing it down puts you ahead of the game. Do you get that? If you write it down, you've already beat 95% of the people, because 95% of the people are not going to write down their first step. So if you can write down what that first step is, you already have beat 95% of other people, because all they're going to do is listen to this conversation, and then they're going to go right back to making things complex. What I'm saying is, let's simplify it and let's figure out what that one thing is. So let's figure out what that one thing is. I said Janelle put in her one thing. Kalas put in the one thing. Stacy put in the one thing. Kenya put in the one thing. Like, figure out what that one thing is. Write that one thing down. Put it down here in the comment section. And then I want you to put it someplace else. And if you could commit to that one thing, everything changes. And so let me just remind you of something. Here's what I believe in my heart. Listen to me carefully. I believe that the thing that you're pursuing right now, that it has your name written all over it. Like, you are going to accomplish this thing. Like, stop allowing yourself to get stuck. Stop building up a false story in your mind as to why it's not going to happen. I'm going to help you right now to get past being stuck. I want you to understand this. A major reason why you're feeling stuck right now is because you're making things way too complex. Way, way, way too complex. As Tony Robbins said, complexity, listen carefully, is the enemy of execution. It does not have to be that complex. You can simplify this thing. What I want you to understand is, I want you to stop for a moment, pull away from all the hustle and bustle, pull away from the frustration, pull away from the grind. Look at this thing and say, how can I make this more simple? How am I complicating this thing? If I had to simplify this thing, what would it look like? And then figure out what is the one step that you've got to take. Commit to taking that one step, and then commit to simplicity. Why do I tell you to do that? Because what happens is, the more as you begin to proceed and you start building momentum, you're going to find a way to make it complex again. You're going to find a way to build up a storyline as to why you got some more things you've got to do. You will find a way to make it more complex. What I'm asking you to do, listen carefully, is to stop making it complex. Find the one step that you've got to take, and then commit to keeping it simple. If you can do that, everything changes. If you can do that, you start building momentum. If you do that, you start approaching the finish line. If you can do that, everything creates massive change and massive shift in your life. So do me a favor. If you've been getting value from this message, do me a favor, heart it up, like it up, hit the share button, because I know that there's somebody that you're connected to. They have to hear this message. So do me that favor right now. Go ahead, make sure you hit the share button, hit the like button, hit the heart button, do whatever you got to do so we can make sure that we spread this message because we're going to set some people free. You hear me? You know, they talking about the truth will set you free. The truth is you making things too complex. You hear me? That's the truth. That's the truth. You may not know it. That's the truth. The truth is you're making it too complex, and it really does not have to be that complex. You hear me? You got this thing. It does not have to be that complex. Now, hey, before I go ahead and chime off, let me go ahead and give you some. For those of you, you're tuning in, I want to give you a very, very quick little gift from me to you. I've got a little quick training I want to send over to you. Here's what I want you to do. I'm going to go ahead and type this in the comment section, but write this down. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to text the word show up. You're going to text the word show up, all one word. I'll type this in the comment section. You're going to text the word show up to 954-278-3701. So once again, you're going to text the word show up, all one word. Make sure there's no space between the word show and up. If you've already gotten this, you know it. If you haven't, take advantage of this now. This is a free, quick video training from me to you. It's my gift from me to you. And all you got to do is you're going to text the word show up. Put no space in between. If you got an iPhone, it's going to try to put the space. Back that thing up. Take the space out. Text the word show up to 954-278-3701. Once again, you're going to text the word show up to 954, all one word, no space in between. Show up to 954-278-3701. Once you do that, follow the prompts, and you're going to be instructed to put in your name, your email address, and then you're going to receive a very quick training from me to you. That's my gift from me to you. And so once again, I want to thank you all for tuning in and joining me. I hope you got some value from this. Remember, as Tony Robbins said, that complexity is the enemy of execution. It is time to execute. And because of that, it is time for you to start simplifying things and stop making things so complex. Once again, text the word show up, all one word, to 954-278-3701. All right, family, I appreciate y'all tuning in. You know I appreciate your love and respect. And, of course, I'll see you next week. Well, actually, next week, where am I going to be? Next week, I'm going to be in Utah. I'm going to be delivering a keynote for a direct sales company, so I may not be on here live, but I'll make sure that I do a couple live streams from Utah so I can check in with all of you. Everybody have a fantastic evening, and I will see you soon. And remember, I always got to say this. You always end it back in the day. Hey, I'll remind you of this. Make sure, ladies and gentlemen, listen to me carefully. Make sure that you continue to show up for your life, because if you don't listen to me carefully, nobody else will. And so I appreciate you tuning in. Everybody have a fantastic evening. I'll talk to you soon.